Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Money Mondays. So happy to have my colleague back this week and for him to have me back. We just realized we've been solo for like a month now. So the team's back together. I'm Belinda Ray, Director of Strategic Partnerships here at GPCOG.
And my name's Paul Johnson. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development here at GPCOG.
And this is Money Mondays, opportunities for our municipal members and regional partners, funding opportunities, regional resources. If you have questions, pop them in the Q&A. We'll tackle them at the end, or you can just email us after the fact. And we always share our slides. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. There we go. Take it away, Paul.
Here we go. I today have for you the 2025 Growth Accelerator Competition, and this is brought to you by the Small Business Administration. So it's probably not something a municipality would go for, but it certainly is something an organization might go for in your municipality. This is actually a repeat program. So the good news is when at the end of this, when you have the link to the website, they have some examples from previous years that you can model afterwards. I believe in our area, the Gulf of Maine Research Institute received this grant. I don't know if any others in the Cumberland County area applied for the grant, but there's some good backlog of previous winners that you can check out. So essentially this is they call it the GAFC. It's the Growth Accelerator Competition, where entrepreneurs support organizations, ESOs, which by the way, there's no like official ESO registration. You can call yourself an ESO or make the case for being an entrepreneur support organization. There's two stages for this grant, and there's a grand total of $9 million up for grabs. And applications for stage one are currently open, as it says here, and stage one is $75,000 awards. And to be clear, it's very possible you would get a stage one award of $75,000, and then the stage two awards, which are larger, you might not qualify for, or you might not receive. But I think that's okay. I think looking for my research, plenty of organizations were probably just going after the 75,000 with the understanding they wouldn't get stage two, which might be a larger chunk of money. So with that, who would apply or why would we apply? I will draw your attention. Well, let's talk about number one is lab to market. And so essentially, can we go between research? Can we start at a research stage and go to commercialization? So I mentioned Gulf of Maine Research Institute. This is probably why they applied for it. They fit nicely in the top part. This is accelerators. This is incubators. This might be a educational institute. So this might not be necessarily the bread and butter everybody on this phone call or on this webinar. But if you look at the second half, capital formation and expanding investment access for entrepreneurs. So if you look at like the number one bullet right down there in the second part, creating a new funding mechanism. So possibly if you're an economic development corporation in a town that doesn't have a revolving loan program, this might be an opportunity for you to actually get this grant funded. Developing more financial stakeholders in an innovation ecosystem. It might be an opportunity to fund your activities to perhaps bring banks together and actually have banks collaborate on an RLF and get a larger RLF revolving loan fund for your area. Number three, improving investment literacy among entrepreneurs. I think we all know that lots of small business owners could benefit from education, and perhaps there's education that could be offered at a more local level and not necessarily up on the webinar or 20 miles away in Portland or what have you. So there's opportunities here. If you read this, if it's not necessarily a municipality, it could be your economic development corporation. It could be a Main Street organization. If you have a Main Street organization, it could possibly be a club, a Rotary Club, or a Kiwanis Club, or anything that might be active in the business community. There's some opportunities here. And the next slide, just the nitty gritty. As always, the application deadline is the 31st. The application is it's pretty straightforward. And I can't quite remember, but this might require some sort of slide deck pitch with the application, which is pretty cool and a little bit different. And, is a little refreshing if you're somebody that fills out lots of grant applications like Belinda. But there's a link there for all the information. And like I said, this is its second iteration, so there is some good information. They had a webinar last week on this. It was a pre-recorded webinar, so the webinar is just up there for you to consume, and it's pretty straightforward. Sorry, my Teams just popped up on me. It's pretty straightforward. The webinar will give you some good information and show you what an successful application looks like. So with that, Belinda, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Paul. It's so funny you said the slide deck is kind of cool, because as soon as you said the slide deck, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Because it is nice to get away from the standard application. Okay, so I have Rural and Tribal Assistance Pilot Program. This is from the US Department of Transportation, and it is a competitive grant program designed to help rural and tribal communities develop transportation infrastructure projects that will qualify for federal funding. That is a mouthful. So we will break down these three things that explain about the grant right here. So first of all, rural and tribal. Tribal, there's a federally recognized list. So if you're on it, you are qualified. Rural is the other option. And this means to be rural for this grant, remember, definitions sometimes vary. You have to not be in a designated urban area as of the 2020 census. Well, that is our PACTS region here in the greater Portland area. Or you can be in an urban area if it has 150,000 people or less, but we have more. So for this grant, what that means for our area is that these pink municipalities are not eligible. They are part of the urban area. The communities outside of the urban area are all eligible because they are considered rural for this grant. Second part is develop transportation infrastructure projects. So they're looking for projects that are in the early stages of development. You haven't really done much with them. You just know you want to do them. You got a little information. These are the types of projects. This is not an exhaustive list. So if you have something that is transportation infrastructure that isn't listed here, that's all right. It might still qualify. But you see lots of different things here: highway, bridge, road projects, transit-oriented development projects, replacement, removal, or repair of culverts that help with aquatic passage. So those kinds of things, all eligible. And when they say develop them, they mean anything here in this gamut of development. So it can be financial services, technical, or legal. And then underneath each of those buckets, you can see a lot of things that qualify. So this is from the very beginning: project planning, figuring out all the financial aspects, legal if you need it, through permitting, public engagement, the whole thing to get you ready. This is what the purpose of this grant is to kind of start to get a pipeline of projects ready. And then what they mean qualify for federal funding is that in order to apply for this grant to get help developing the project needs to be eligible for one of these programs here. And these are all very clearly outlined in the notice of funding opportunity, which I'll give you a link to later. So you can see what kinds of projects qualify for TIFIA and infra and mega and RAISE. You are not obligated to apply for one of these afterwards. They just want to make sure that anything that they're funding with the first round has the potential to move on and get implementation funding. So like I said, they're creating a pipeline through this grant. Here are the eligible entities, usual suspects. Key features here. You can apply for this either for a single project, and I will mention I saw that Bar Harbor applied on its own and got a grant in the last round of this. So you can do that if you have a project within your municipality. Minimum of 200,000, maximum of 750, and that, remember, this is for the developing of the project. This is not the project cost. For a multi-community, so you can have multiple communities working together, minimum is 500,000, maximum 2.25 million. So there is no cost share, which is excellent. You don't have to worry about that. Remember, don't pass go on this one unless you are rural or tribal. You don't want to get into an application and then find out, oh, we're not even eligible. I've added this week. What are the odds? So for the single project bucket, they have 10 million available and they're looking at giving out 13 to 50 awards. So that's pretty good. And then in multi-community, the amount available is 17 million, and that's going to be between 7 and 34. So, 7 if everyone asks for and gets the max, 34 if everyone asks for the minimum and gets that. Difficulty here, I put 5. It's very clear that USDOT is trying to make these applications easier for people to do. So this one, for instance, has an online portal. So again, you're not going to be sitting at your computer and trying to figure out how to put this all together. They've got the questions laid out for you. Within the funding opportunity, you can even get a preview of those questions. You can get a link to last year's application so you can see what the questions were. And this one, the application hasn't opened yet, but it will open on March 4th. And at that time, you can get the application and you can start kind of putting together your answers offline so that you can then get into the portal and copy paste. And this is a situation where you have to do it in one sitting. They don't want you to get in, get out, get in, get out. So you have to be ready to go when you get into the portal and just put all your information in. The final application is due April 3rd by 5 p.m. And I've got some next steps, where you might go, read the NOFO, visit the website. There's a webinar tomorrow if you want to learn more. If you can't attend, that recording will be posted later. And then other things you might want to do is talk with your municipal neighbors to see if there's a multi-community application there. I talked with Will Gale at MainDOT to see if they were interested in applying because there is a state entity eligibility. And he said they're having an internal discussion. They are looking at this. So you might want to contact him and see if you can be part of a state application, which probably has a better shot than a single community, I would guess. And then the application process becomes easier because MainDOT would handle all of that. You'd need to provide your information. And then if the state's not doing one, you can contact me. We can see about the possibility of a GPCOG regional application. But if the state is submitting, I think that's probably the way to go. So that is that. I can see, I do not see any questions because we are always so clear with our information. So that's all I have. Paul, anything else you'd like to add?
No, just it's good to get back in the routine. And is next Monday a holiday?
It is. That is very
Ah,
good to mention. So in the routine, out of the routine, what's next week? The 20th? Yeah. So we'll be back on the 27th with you all. Enjoy your longer weekend and, day of service on Monday if you're doing that for MLK.
thanks, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.